a wide variety of U.S. companies increasingly view themselves as global businesses rather than simply U.S. firms. This evolving view manifests itself in a number of ways, all seemingly aimed at increasing profit margins through the avoidance of high corporate tax rates largely not seen outside the United States. This briefing will examine the drivers behind these practices, as well as the actions many firms are taking to take advantage of this global presence. We'll also take a look at U.S. government reactions to these corporate maneuvers and the potential consequences for U.S. companies. Over the previous decade, approximately 47 major U.S. corporations moved their headquarters overseas. While this may not sound like a huge number, it is a significant increase over the previous 2 decades, which saw only 29 companies migrating their operations overseas. This begs the question, why are more companies changing their address? The obvious answer here is taxes. The U.S. imposes a 39% tax rate on companies headquartered in the United States, a level that has persisted for at least the last decade. Possibly less well known, however, is that the average effective corporate tax rate in the United States still sits at 27%. So how does this stack up with other countries? The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development estimates that as of 2013, the average statutory corporate tax rate was approximately 25%, considerably lower than that of the US, which tops the OECD's list. Additionally, the average effective corporate tax rate internationally was only 20%, still 7% lower than that of the United States. The most striking difference between the US and most foreign tax laws relates to the taxation of foreign earnings. Most foreign countries use a territorial tax system that does not tax foreign income. The US, on the other hand, taxes repatriated foreign earnings at the same rate as domestic earnings. U.S. companies have evolved multiple strategies for dealing with these tax issues. Mergers with larger foreign firms, inversions or mergers with smaller foreign firms, and offshoring profits in order to avoid the taxes imposed upon repatriation. Given that mergers with larger firms are not generally undertaken for tax purposes, we'll be looking at the 2 strategies that are inversions and profit offshoring. Inversions have a relatively long history, with some pointing to the 1982 move of the New Orleans-based construction firm McDermott to Panama, where it had a subsidiary, as the first corporate inversion in recent history. Since then, mergers with smaller foreign companies have become an increasingly popular means of shifting a company's tax base. A look at some of the recently proposed inversions shows that American companies often choose neutral third countries rather than relocating to the home of the country of the smaller merger partner. Britain has become a popular choice given obvious similarities with the United States and the UK's territorial tax system, which has dropped its tax rate to approximately 20% this year. For those who choose not to merge, offshoring foreign profits becomes an important consideration. It is estimated that American firms are holding some $2.1 million in profits overseas. Technology firms appear to be leading the way in this regard, with just 8 major tech companies accounting for 1/5 of the aforementioned sum. There are obvious problems with this type of a move, however. Money held overseas can't be used to reinvest in a company's U.S. operations, lest the funds be subject to repatriation taxes by the IRS. Because of this, many companies choose to reinvest their foreign earnings outside the U.S., expanding operations in foreign subsidiaries. Such practices have not gone unnoticed by the U.S. government, which wants to keep companies headquartered in the U.S. and sees a huge pot of untapped revenue in offshored foreign earnings. These goals drive the formulation of new regulations, such as 2004's American Jobs Creation Act, which made it harder for firms to invert without a substantial business presence at their new overseas headquarters. More recently, the Obama administration enacted regulations in 2014 that actually led to several companies putting a halt to their inversion plans. Despite the well-intentioned meaning of the regulations, they have potentially serious negative consequences for American companies. We've already seen that such regulations sometimes increase the likelihood of companies reinvesting earnings overseas. However, some posit that the increased tax exposure also makes it more likely that American firms will be bought out by foreign rivals. It is estimated that the U.S. has seen a loss of some $179 billion in assets of U.S.-based companies because of foreign acquisition in the last decade. The Wall Street Journal's look at foreign acquisition of American pharmaceutical companies offers good insight into this issue, highlighting 2 recent multi-billion-dollar acquisitions of American companies by Canadian firms. As we can see, global companies have a number of considerations to keep in mind when looking at how best to leverage the international nature of their business. Keeping a competitive edge in the face of evolving international business practices and tax laws will require a similarly evolved perspective when it comes to navigating these ever-changing systems.